Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsal, and with everything that's going on in the world, AI is everything what people are talking about all day long. It's the latest buzz. When it comes to the latest buzz, sometimes there are people who are early adopters, and there are people who look at it with apprehension. Like, is that something I really need? Is that something that's going to really help me? And our guest today is somebody who's deeply rooted in the technology industry, who's going to talk to us about what technology can do for our firm, what power we can have when we use it properly, when we implement AI in a way that is strategic. What can that do for us? So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Our guest is Bim Dave. Bim Dave is an executive VP at Helm360 and a legal technology company that helps law firms implement best of breed solutions. With over 20 years of experience in the legal tech industry, Bim is an accomplished leader and a driving force behind Helm360's success. His expertise in legal technology, coupled with his passion for innovation, has helped Helm360 become a recognized industry leader in delivering innovative solutions to law firms and legal departments across the globe. Bim, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's really great to be here.
And I love, anybody who is willing to spend some time with us on the show is, you're a giving person. You're truly a giver. Really appreciate that. On behalf of my audience, thank you for taking the time for us to have this conversation. I like to start really simple. People don't know who you are. Give us the quick synopsis or overview of who you are, what your journey is, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So I kind of started my legal technology career a little over 20 years ago, and really started the journey as a support guy, right? So I was one of the first technical support guys that was part of the Thomson Reuters team at that time in Europe. Elite back in those days, if anyone knows that brand, was a very big brand and growing brand at that point, and we were kind of expanding into Europe. So my first job was basically, sitting on a support desk, helping customers with technical issues with products, and helping law firms specifically with helping them get the best out of their product. So I spent a few years doing that, around 10 years in the kind of support space, helping customers and dealing with them on a day-to-day basis. Went from basically being the technical support analyst to running the EMEA team, and then moved on to the consulting teams at Thomson Reuters, where I was basically responsible for a lot of the rollouts of the technology solutions across the globe. So really running everything from a technology perspective, from data conversion all the way through to customizations and building integrations with different platforms. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell over the last few years. Just probably about 7 years ago, joined Helm360. And here we've kind of continued that journey of really helping customers implement best of breed solutions. So that's what I kind of do today and what our team set up to do.
So I'm not familiar with Helm360. Give me the broad strokes of what they do. I know I read in the bio a one sentence synopsis of it, but give us a little bit of a deeper dive into what Helm360 does.
Sure. Yeah. So we really see ourselves as an extension of our customers, right? So what we do is we help a lot of law firms with implementing new technology, and that can range from technology that we consider to be best of breed, or the firms consider to be best of breed solutions, where there's usually challenges in terms of how you go about implementing such technology. So we bring resources to the table to enable law firms to be able to implement that technology really quickly and efficiently, and in a way that makes sense to the firm. So that can range from data conversion services, cleansing services to make sure that the data going into a system is good, helping with report development, so you're getting the best kind of insights out of your data, but really everything all the way through to just project managing it to make sure that the solution goes in a timely manner. But what we've also got as part of our Helm360 kind of offering is what we consider to be accelerators. So, for example, what we didn't really want to do is go to the market with a resources only solution, right? So what we do is when we talk about data conversion, for example, what we do is we kind of invest time in building assets alongside of what we actually go and do from a physical kind of coding perspective. So we have a tool called Digital Eye, for example, that allows us to accelerate some of the data cleansing and data discovery processes that typically take regular consultant like hours, days to do, depending on the state of the data. We basically throw the tooling into the package that we offer to our customers, so we can really make an impact and show some return on investment very, very quickly by accelerating some of that stuff through some of the AI technology that's incorporated into those kind of solutions to enable us to do that. So we have Digital Eye as part of our product offerings. We also help customers with testing. So we have an automation testing suite for customers using the Elite 3E platform. And finally, we have a chatbot solution called Termi, which is basically an AI-based chatbot that leverages some of the kind of buzzword technologies that you mentioned at the beginning with GPT models, large language models, to enable customers to really have a simple user experience across those best of breed solutions that they may have.
Now, it sounds like you're servicing existing software stacks. So what are you finding are the most common applications that when you come and work with a law firm that they're presenting to you and saying, hey, we need to move data from this to that? What are the actual underlying pieces of software that you're working on?
So a lot of the kind of focus is around the core case management system and the financial management system. So a lot of the firms that we're dealing with have kind of been on a bit of a journey themselves in terms of adopting early technology solutions that may have come out 10, sometimes 20 years ago, and that have served them really, really well. But a lot of those vendors that provided those solutions are now bringing those to end of life. So now a lot of firms may have a solution that actually works really well for them, but from a support perspective, they're basically like in the process of getting to a state where they're out of support, maybe introducing some risk to the firm from a security perspective, because some of those vendors may not provide security patches, etc., for the future. So it really kind of forces them on a journey to really look at the technology and see how they can kind of evolve that to the next stage. And usually what that consists of is not just like an upgrade to a new solution, it's usually a complete migration to a brand new platform. And that's even with existing vendors that may have had a technology solution, built on very, very old technology platforms like Infomix 4GL and, old versions of SQL. And actually like selling a new product that may be built from the ground up, but not really thinking through like that migration path and how easy that might be for customers. So a lot of the firms that come to us really have that challenge to say, look, we've been on a platform for a long time. It actually does what we need it to do on the tin, right? But really we're kind of being forced on this journey to go to something new, which involves a lot of change, right? Because it's really, looking at the data, taking it, and making sure that it can fit into the new platform correctly. There's the whole validation process to make sure that my numbers make sense, right? So that's a big area of focus in terms of making sure that, if I'm balancing at the moment consistently and I can see that my numbers make sense, to make sure that after conversion, the same thing applies and that, you've still got validity in the numbers and you can prove that the numbers are good. And a lot of the onus of that is kind of pushed back to the law firm, right? Because at the end of the day, they are the ones that know their data. They know what the numbers should look like. And even if you're bringing in a specialist to go and move that data across, they may move it and all it takes is for some incorrect mapping or some incorrect coding to really throw the numbers off, right? And that then ends up in a bit of a situation in terms of then figuring out how you plug those holes. So yeah, I would say the kind of financial management system in particular is a core area, but then also alongside that, case management, CRM data, all of those kind of key areas that really form the kind of basis of a business management solution overall for customers.
Now, I mean, from the way that you're describing everything, the vision I have in my mind is a fairly large firm that has a large data set. They have a large technology budget, able to invest in this way. My question, I have two questions or one and a half, kind of piggybacking off of each other. My question to you is, what is the typical size of law firm that these services are provided to? And then what is the solution for somebody who's smaller than that, but still needs the same project done or skill set done? Where can they go to get that to get that work, the data migration, the data cleaning, the reporting for their top KPIs? These are things that typical law firm owners are not technology people. They would struggle to kind of do this on their own. So those two questions kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, great question. So we actually address quite a broad range of the market. So we have solutions that are really focused on what we consider to be the small mid-market firms, and that's anything from solo lawyers all the way through to around about the 100 lawyer mark. So that's kind of a sweet spot for us in terms of some of our technology solutions around data in particular, because those are the ones that really find it hard to get the time and the expertise to be able to take data out of their system. So we do a lot of data extractions, for example, to move those legacy platforms onto new ones. We also get called in to help customers in that particular end of the space to help with the analytics side of things, right? Because they may have a product that works for them, but actually making sense out of the data, it can be challenging as well. And without them having to invest like hours and hours on custom reporting to be able to give them the data that they want, sometimes it's easier to kind of like come to a provider like us, and we can plug in a solution that actually makes sense. So that's kind of where the Termi product line fits in, because it's a SaaS-based solution. So very little effort in terms of deployment, and it basically plugs into the existing system that's there, so that we can then produce some analytics and actually give lawyers a much easier interface into the data that might be there, both from a kind of like a reporting perspective, but also from an action perspective, because what we're able to do with that platform is help those smaller lawyers be more efficient with their time, right? Because ultimately, nobody really has time to kind of go and figure out a dashboard and go and drill down into metrics. Really, what we focus on is really enabling the lawyers to basically do what they do best, which is practice law. And we try and bridge the gap between them and the technology to make sure that they can get the best out of it. There's a really good example of a firm that we worked with a few years ago, and they were really struggling with helping lawyers kind of understand what their billable hours were looking like, and keeping track of them, and really maximizing their ability to kind of hit their targets. So they actually built a simple dashboard, like a fee earner dashboard, a timekeeper dashboard, that allowed them to basically, get the stats that they need. And what they found was that actually after launching that solution, and they spent, a decent amount of money on making this happen, because it was a custom dashboard that connected to their system. What they found was the adoption rate in terms of lawyers actually going to look at their stats was so low. Like it was like less than 10% of the audience that was really actually looking at the data. And what that basically kind of gave us some insight in is that those technology solutions may ultimately solve a problem on paper, right? But actually, if we don't make it super simple and easy for lawyers and other stakeholders to consume, then ultimately you kind of lose the audience completely, right? And that's really where a lot of the kind of adoption issues come into play. So our approach is to kind of flip that on its head and actually say, rather than make it a self-serve system, which is what a lot of those solutions are able to offer, what we do is we kind of flip it to say, let us tell the lawyer when they need to act on something. So for example, if they're missing time at the end of the month, let's try and be a little bit more intelligent, go and have a look and see if we can connect to their Outlook experience, for example, and see that they've had a meeting. We can pick up the fact that they've had a meeting with a particular client. We can then go and take a look at the time entry system and go and see if there's any time entered for that client. And if that's not there, go and proactively prompt the lawyer to go and enter that time, right? So it just saves that element of them having to think about going into the time entry solution and doing it. Or in the same kind of principle in terms of other scenarios like collections and all that kind of stuff, really proactively prompting them to then perform an action essentially. So we do a lot in that space for the small market, and then all the way we do kind of scale all the way up to some of the big global firms as well, which tend to be like longer term engagements, a bit more resource heavy, and some of the technology solutions also scale up to that level.
Now, when you start dealing with a typical client, my guess is that their view of what's possible is much smaller than what you know is possible. So what are the things that they're not asking that when you sit down with somebody, you say, oh, you're not doing this. This is a must because it has this ROI. Like there's got to be some secret stuff that you guys are doing when you bring a client on that will wow them off the bat, that will give them something they never thought they could have. Can you give me some examples of those?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that customers don't always think about the bigger picture and think about how much actual manual effort is going into some of the work that they do, right? And I think a lot of us kind of take that for granted. It's little things like for a great example is where we think about that collection scenario I was just talking about. It's kind of been proven time and time again that if the person that's actually delivered the work to a customer is not the person then chasing down the collection, the likelihood of you collecting that money drastically goes down, every week that it's outstanding. But nobody likes to do that, right? Nobody likes to do that kind of phone call, make that phone call and get it done. And sometimes that can get lost into the mix of actually doing all the other kind of workloads that you need to do. So what we would typically do is if a customer comes to me and says, we really need a really good collections report that we can distribute via email, and that would be really helpful for us, right? So my counter to that would be, I'm going to give you a report that's gonna answer the question as to who owes you money and who you need to go after to collect. But actually, why don't we think about how we can enable the lawyer to actually be more efficient at actually going to collect that money, right? And we all know that we live by our calendars, we live by our Outlook calendars these days. So instead of sending the collection report for them to then go and consume and make a decision to go and act on it, let's proactively prompt them through our chat channel. Let's give them the fact that you've got this outstanding collection for customer X, it's this amount, and give them some options, right, to automate the process. So one option could be with a click of a button, you could send a reminder, right, and a personalized reminder with a message to say, if you wouldn't mind paying your bill, here's the details of it. And the other one, which I think is actually more effective, is actually automatically scheduling based on availability in your calendar, again at a click of a button, a appointment reminder so that the lawyer knows that they need to follow up. But not only that, we give them the context of what they need to follow up. So in the appointment reminder, we pull information from the practice management system around the client's information, how much money is on account, all of the different elements that they would need, a copy of the invoices attached to the appointment. So then it becomes very, very easy for them to literally open up their appointment, click on the telephone link to go and phone that client, and they have all of the information about the invoice in front of them as well, right? So it just kind of gives them a quicker route to be able to do that. And it's those kind of process efficiency gains, I would say, is really what we challenge firms with, right? To really think about how they could kind of flip, what they're thinking as the solution on the head and see how we can actually save them time, save them money in a lot of cases where, for example, if we think about some of the custom solutions that customers come up with, a lot of those traditionally have been delivered for like a specific purpose, right? So what we will try to do is try and make things a bit more scalable and flexible so that we're more kind of configuration driven versus actually having to make lots and lots of code changes over and over again. So what we'll typically do is we'll build a customization, or if it's a custom report, for example, but we'll actually build it in a way that then allows them to actually extend it in future without necessarily having to hire us as a developer again, giving them configuration options from the outset and challenging the thinking in terms of you may need X today, but then what if you need to ask these questions of the model in future? How do we evolve that, right? How do we make sure that we're planning for the future, basically?
Now, one of the challenges that firm owners have is in the planning of their future execution. So, say they want to grow by a certain percentage, or they want to hit certain revenue targets, and because of that, they know that they need to serve a certain number of clients. They don't have the data readily available to figure out what is that going to mean for staffing. How many staff members do I need to add, and in which positions? Um, and they kind of go with their gut to try to figure that out. Do you have solutions when it comes to projecting changes in the firm and being able to predict cash flow, being able to predict human resource needs, and kind of helping in that process to navigate what does it look like to be able to hit these target metrics?
Yes, yeah. So that's really where our Termi product comes into play, right? Because ultimately, what it's doing is it's giving you the ability to firstly see, what the current state of play is, look at the history, and see the historical kind of run rate. But especially with the kind of introduction of our integration with the GPT model, what it then allows you to do is kind of take that historical data, pass it through the AI model to then provide some predictive analysis, right? So then we can kind of see that this data, and it doesn't really matter what data it is, it can be any particular report, but you can kind of feed that into the AI model to then be able to give you some descriptive understanding of what the future might look like. What we've done with the kind of GPT integration, which actually I think simplifies things a little as well, is the way that I mean, predictive analytics has been around for a long time, right? But the way that people consume it has kind of evolved to a point where I think it's a lot more simple. So in the past, where I would have to look at a dashboard and lots of different charts and things to kind of see trend lines and all that kind of stuff, what we use AI for now is really to kind of explain the data, right? So rather than me having to go and look at a visual, just tell me what I need to know, right? So rather than me having to interpret the data, we let the AI do the interpretation of the data and then explain it in plain English back to us, right? And that's really one of the powerful things, is that I can pass in a model of data that consists of the last 12 months run rate for cash flow, for example, feed that into the GPT model through our chat interface, and ultimately it can give me, firstly, it can very simply and easily define like where the anomalies might be, so where it sees anomalies and why those anomalies might be. It can give those kind of suggestions. But like you say, like also then kind of predicting the future to say, if things stay the same, this is what we can expect to happen over the next like 6 months, 12 months, and then playing with that model, right? So then you can kind of see how different scenarios might play out.
So I can just go in there and ask it to tell me, hey, if we increased our revenue by 50%, what would we have to increase our marketing budget by, and how would our staffing need to change?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is quite powerful is really leveraging the firm's knowledge. Like another thing that we see time and time again is we go into customers and they have pretty much every firm that I've gone to will have either a SharePoint portal or some kind of intranet site with hundreds, if not thousands, of links going to different pieces of knowledge that they've built up and acquired over the years. And they could be everything from like firm policy to expense policies to HR policy, like all sorts of different things, as well as like the legal know-how templates and stuff that they've built up over time. And being able to access that knowledge in a meaningful way also becomes a lot easier. So what we've got again within the Termi solution is the ability to add that kind of natural language component to it, where we can kind of consume all of that data that lives in PDFs and documents and Excels, whatever kind of format it might live in, put it into what we call a vector database, basically, which then makes it very efficient to go and search that data, and then basically use the AI to not just pinpoint which document an answer lives in, but actually extract the information from that document and turn it into an answer, right? So I can then ask a simple question. I can add value to a customer pretty quickly, right? Just by consuming the existing knowledge that's within their ecosystem and then translating that into an answer based off all of the content that's out there. So again, it's saving a lot of time and making the data that you already have quite useful, versus somebody, especially somebody new who may be joining the firm, having to go and figure out how to find something, right? Which is usually where a lot of the challenges lie.
This is all fascinating stuff, and really stretching our imagination of what's possible. Before we close out, people who are listening to this, I sit here. My job is to try to figure out like what's going through my listeners' minds, right? Like what's the question that they have. And listening to this, I'm assuming that the listener is saying, this all sounds great, but it sounds very expensive. I probably don't have the budget for this. I'm not even going to think about exploring this. Can you give me some sort of idea of what kind of costs somebody might be looking at to engage in these kinds of projects?
So again, with some of the evolvement in terms of some of the AI technology that's available now, the cost has dramatically dropped, right? Like in terms of being able to provision some of these services. So ultimately, it allows vendors like us to pass that on to customers. So it can range depending on what you want it to be connected to and all of the different analytics that need to be kind of set up and configured. But typically, a firm would spend anything from like high single digit numbers to low double digit numbers. It's not very, very expensive from a solution perspective. A lot of it obviously depends on what you want to achieve from a product, but the approach that we kind of take to minimize upfront expense, particularly with these kind of technology products where there is a little unknown, right? There's a little maybe risk involved in terms of like putting in something brand new, right? That maybe you don't know what the ROI is from day one. So what we like to do with our customers is to really define upfront the problem that needs to be solved by the technology, right? So kind of break it down into chunks that are easy to consume for the firm and easy to implement, so that we can have a very short runway to actually show some of the value that the product can deliver. So like that scenario that I mentioned where you're using existing knowledge that's already in the firm to feed into an AI solution like Termi is a great starting point, right? Because then you've got quick ROI, you can actually see the value, you can start to see some of the efficiencies and then build on top of it, right? So your upfront investment is low because you can kind of pretty much turn it on and go in a very short amount of time and at a relatively low cost. And then over time, as you see the benefit of that, you can always add on to it, right? So it then allows you to kind of plan out your cost as well, rather than having to upfront it all just to see what might happen or might not happen. So the incremental approach kind of helps to kind of minimize that risk as well.
Very interesting. So as we close out, there was one question I had a moment ago, but I forgot what it was. So we're gonna close out without it. What I do with my guests is I give you an opportunity to number one, share one piece of advice, parting piece of wisdom with our listeners, and number two, if somebody is really intrigued by what you're sharing, they want to explore what this might look like for them. How would they take the next steps to learn more about you and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would say don't fear technology, right? Like the biggest takeaway is don't fear technology. There's a lot of good press and bad press around what AI is and what it can bring to a firm, and it really does scale down to small law firms. And I actually think it can have a bigger impact in smaller law firms because they're a lot more agile and able to actually implement such solutions a lot quicker because the decision-making process is much more robust and a lot shorter in terms of red tape to be able to get to a decision, right? So embrace the change, like, give it a try. There's nothing stopping from working with vendors like myself or others out there to proof of concept something. Like we always like to make sure that we can show customers value, and we're always open to proof of concepts to show customers in this space what they can do. So yeah, just embrace the change and give it a go is my answer. And in terms of the next step, just go to helm360.com. go and have a look at our information. There's a contact us page there, or look me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk to customers about the potential of products like Termi and other service offerings we can help with.
Awesome. Thank you, Bim. I really appreciate you being here. Folks, we're going to link that up in the show notes so you don't have to remember any of the links or resources that he just shared. If you enjoyed this episode and you're not yet a subscriber of the podcast, we'd love it if you hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the show, where we have a new episode that comes out at a minimum once a week, every Thursday, plus additional bonus episodes that we release from time to time. As well, we live and thrive on reviews, and we'd love it if you came into your podcast directory and gave us a star rating as well as a written review. It's really helpful for people who are looking to see what show should they listen to next, where should they go for new information. Anybody else, we grow by people seeing quantity and quality of reviews. So we'd love it if you came in and left us a rating and review. And folks, just stay focused on profitability, which technology can really make that happen. One of the thought processes going on in my head is there's certain financial analysis that I do with my clients to try to help them unlock the key to getting to that 35 to 50% profitability range that we target with our clients. And one of the things that I can see this technology solution doing is making it much easier to identify what is the path to get there. So many people don't even know which KPIs to look at. Like, what is the driving thing? What is the determining factor that drives the variable in my expenses to deliver to a client? And this software likely can, or this technology solution likely can help you unlock that and get insight into the information at a level that you never had before, which can really help you to make the right decisions to get to that goal. It's not just about growth. It's not just about efficiency. It's about making the right moves to solve, like Bim said, you got to come to us with the problem. Tell us what is it that you want to solve, and then we'll find the technology solution to provide to solve that problem. And I think that's the key is you got to be asking the right questions. You got to be trying to solve the right problem. And that's the first place that you want to start. And we help you on this podcast to do that. By constantly talking about all these different topics, it allows you to question everything around you and everything you're doing, and to really look at the inner workings of your business and not just go through the day-to-day and hope for the best. So stay focused on your profitability. And when a speaker like Bim comes on our podcast and really excites you about something, explore it. Go to their website, contact them, reach out to Bim on LinkedIn, and start a conversation. Maybe it's out of your budget, but at the same time, maybe it's way more cost effective than you thought. And maybe you could find a solution to a problem that you're challenged with that would be more costly to you to just sit with in the long run. So until next time, thank you for being a listener of the Profit with Law podcast. We'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.